Hello everybody and welcome to Dynamic GT League's car guide for the F1500, which is going to be used in the Formula Icons Cup in the Dynamic GT League. Now I'm doing this video as basically as a guide to help people through the championship that's coming up, but also for anybody else that drives this car. You might find this information useful. It's to do with the gearing, also how to use the brakes, but also I want to mention that this car does have lots and lots of grip, so you may see at the end of this video on the couple of laps that I do, you may see me taking corners faster than you thought the car could go. Don't be afraid of pushing it and finding out what it can and can't do. Obviously though, there are going to be a few quirks to how and where you can push the car. So at the end of this video there is going to be a couple of laps that I'll talk over and give some information, but it's kind of like a calm but fast way of driving the car. Anyway, gonna go on to some other stuff first. So I'm gonna start off with using the gears and not short shifting. So don't short shift in this car. Only use first gear for the starts. The starts can be a bit tricky, but if you short shift at say 30 mile an hour in first, the car's going to bog down. Now we'll slowly gain up to speed and we'll short shift again, so we'll go to about 100 in second gear. Then we'll change to third, changing 150. You think it's okay, but the car again is it's bogged down a bit. We're not actually in the turbo range quite nicely. Now the car's starting to pick up speed. At the 1000 meters we're doing 177 mile an hour, but we're going to go all the way to the bridge in the distance. So at 1500 we're at 180. Let's see what we're at 2000. 182. And when do we get to 183? 100 meters before the bridge ish. So let's do it now where we use all of the revs. So remember, in first gear we changed gear at about 30 mile an hour. Don't do that. Let it bounce off the limiter. Don't be afraid of it bouncing off the limiter at first until you work out how fast the car can go in each gear. So it'll do 60 in first. Now we're up into second. Now we're already doing 100. It'll do 115 easily. So you can bounce the limiter and change up. It's a lot faster than shifting too soon in third. It'll do 159, and up to fourth we go. Let's see what speed we get to when we're at the 1000 meters. I think it was 177, and we're at 177 before it, so it may not seem a lot, but it is actually a hell of a lot of difference. Also 1300 meters for 180 mile an hour. So let's see what we get at the bridge. We're at 182 already. When do we get to 183 now? So touch quicker to 183, but overall a much faster running car. Basically it will bog down. Okay, now for the brakes. We're going to do a bit of a brake test here where I'm just going to slam the brakes on and bring the car to a stop. Now obviously that isn't something we normally do in a race, but I just want to show something. So don't worry too much about what I'm doing with the gears here, but as I've mentioned, don't be afraid of revving it and bouncing it off the rev limiter. It is actually faster to do that than if you do short shift or shift a touch too soon. Okay, we're going to hit the brakes at 1000 meters. And we're just going to slam them on hard, but I want you to look at the brake indicator and how much ABS is actually kicking in. Look, the white reducing is not me lifting off the pedal, that's the ABS coming in more. So we're stopped a bit short of 1150 meters. So could we stop in a similar distance but actually not punish the tyres by going full brakes and having the ABS system kick in as much? The answer is yes, you can. Now unfortunately, when I did this run, it didn't occur to me that I don't normally come to a stop. So I don't stop as short as I could have done because I'm not used to actually bringing the car to a stop. But we're going to hit the brakes again at the 1000 meters, but this time we're going to hit the brakes hard and then we're going to feed off them. And you'll see that if you look again at the brake indicator. So on the brakes, feeding off, and look, the ABS is reducing with me reducing the amount of brakes that I'm using. So reducing the ABS, how do we do that? Quite simply, if you feed off the brakes a bit, then it's going to use less ABS. If it's using less ABS, you're actually going to slow down faster, because instead of the car trying to stop you locking up the brakes, it's just going to be trying to slow you down. So we do another run here of, this is where I'm like, okay, now I've got to bring it to a stop. So can I hit the brakes, bring the speed down, but also feed off the brakes, not putting anywhere near as much punishment through the tyres, not using the ABS anywhere near as much, and bring it to a stop in a similar distance. We're feeding those brakes off. I've got full brakes now to stop it, but if we look, we're at about a similar distance, so I haven't used anywhere near as much brakes, but I've still stopped. Okay, so now we'll do it with that braking style, but also we'll introduce the downshift of the gears, because obviously downshifting can introduce the engine braking, which can help slow you down even more. Just want to mention here as well, look, I'm revving the nuts off it here, and it even went up to 117 in second gear there. And yeah, look, we've bounced it in third, it will go 159.60, 159.60, 159.60, faster than it dropping down to 150. Okay, so we're going to hit the brakes and then feed off them and downshift, engine braking coming in, nice feed off the brakes, gone full on the brakes now just to bring it to a stop. So you can bring the car to a stop in a very similar distance while putting a hell of a lot less work through your tyres. Okay, this particular lap I do here is on cold tyres, so we're braking at the black marks. Avoid the apex of turn 1, otherwise you end up with a very tight line where you may have to get on and off the throttle to make the second apex. Stay in second gear, turn in before the end of the curb, avoid the sausage, that's tagging it a little bit, it's not as harsh as it could be. Now third gear through that right hander, if you get it out of shape a little bit though, don't be afraid of dropping down to second. Don't be too aggressive here on the throttle, braking gently, feeding off it, let the car get to the apex, then go full power, and don't be afraid of going full power. Crest of the hill is where we turn in, so lift off, turn in. I was a little bit wide there, but it's safe. If you turn in at the crest of the hill and you hit the sausage, you've turned in too soon. Again, brake at the just before the crest of the hill. Don't be afraid of steering it quite a bit here, and you can go full throttle very, very early. Wide entry is faster, and in qualifying you can do flat out through that left-hander. In the race though, I wouldn't advise it. Third gear for the penultimate corner there, and then on the brakes again hard. Get into the apex and full throttle as soon as you're at that apex. However, if you brake too late for it, you're not going to be able to do that. When you go full throttle, you'll run wide. So we're going to run on to another lap here, and I'll be honest, I can't remember exactly what happens, but anyway. So the braking point, it's about the start of the black marks. We can just see in the distance coming in now. And as I mentioned, we don't want to get too close. This is too close to the apex of turn 1. I'm now wide here and I had to be on and off the throttle. Now I'm slower here and I'm out of position. But clobbered the sausage because I'm not going as fast and I've turned in more than expected. Gone up to third, but my speed's low, so I've dropped it down to second to use the revs. So all of that has just cost me a chunk of time from taking turn 1 too tight. As I said, don't get too greedy on the way into that corner, you'll end up going wide. And again, lift off and turn in at the crest, try and avoid the sausage, otherwise you're going to end up doing that. So this is why I've shown this, so that if you find you're hitting the sausage, you are either turning in too soon or you're turning in too much. So make sure if you are hitting that sausage curb, to basically try turning in a little bit later, and if you end up just running miles off wide, then turn in a little bit sooner. But you don't have to turn in lots for it. This corner, as I mentioned, in qualifying it can be done flat out, but in the race it will destroy your tyres if you continually try taking it flat out. And also the final corner, brake at the start of the black marks, get it down to second gear, and then at the apex full throttle, right? The later and harder you brake into that final corner, the longer you will have to wait to get on the power, and you will be a sitting duck on the straight. So let's go again. Brake at the start of the black marks, and we're going to avoid turn 1. Tuck in for turn 2, and we're already full throttle. I mean, I've revved it a little bit there, but it's not too bad. Stay in second, turn in before the curb, don't get on the power too soon, it does force you to run wide. We're up to third this time, turning in before the end of the curb, careful of the sausage, went down to second again. So second is a bit of a safety net. Fading the brakes out here, full throttle, not too soon, but yeah, this one, as I mentioned, crest of the hill, turn in, don't have to turn in loads, and once you get a nice turning point, you realise the turning point there is very comfortable corner. Brake early, just over the crest of the hill, you don't have to brake loads, turn it in, use the curb, flick the steering, full throttle before we even hit the right-hander. We can turn in late and we can go flat out in qualifying, but if you tag the curb, be careful you run wide. As I mentioned, you can take this corner third gear, or if you feel the revs are low, use second, hard on the brakes but fade them off again, get it tucked in and full throttle on the apex. So even though I'm sort of going quickish here, it wasn't a great lap. I mean, that was a 15.7, so we'll try pushing it a little bit more, but without actually trying to push too much. So we couldn't take the second corner flat out. This time we're full throttle much earlier because we had a much better run through turn one. Avoid the sausage, just tagged it a little bit, but it's not too harsh. Third gear, turn in, avoid the sausage, it's not flat out through there. Now this one, I'm braking sort of just before the black marks, I think, not braking too hard, fading off, being patient before I get full throttle, just waiting a little bit before you get full throttle, saves you from running wide. Again, lift off, crest of the hill, turn in, and now we're taking that corner considerably faster than we were before. Brake before the crest of the hill at the black marks, off the brakes, turn it in, flick the steering, we're already full throttle, up into third gear. In the race, do a little courtesy lift, but in qualifying we're going to go in aggressive, but be careful of the exit. Third gear, we're braking before we make too many mistakes, and then again, if we brake too late like we have done here, we've turned in, missed the apex, can't get on the throttle until considerably later, and that's cost us a massive chunk of time. Now this ends up being a faster lap, but that final sector was slower, so make sure you don't get conned by the clock there, because it would be very easy for me to think, oh well, the way I took that final corner was fine. It really wasn't. So braking that little bit earlier, or not trying to be a dander and brake late, will benefit you massively on the exit of corners, because if you can find that you can go full throttle early in this car in second gear, the car can be stable for you and you can just absolutely nail it. At this track anyway. Right, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. There is a short video I've done as a bit of a guide as well, showing 3 different camera views of the same lap to give a perspective from each of the different camera views with some short hints and tips. But if you found this useful, then yeah, try and put it into use on the racetrack. And you don't, well, let's put it this way. If when driving this car you feel like you are on the absolute ragged edge, you might be just pushing it a little bit too much, perhaps slow things down a little bit, because if you do find yourself braking too late, getting on the marbles, being on the dirty part of the track, you're not going to have any grip, you're not going to feel like it's steering for you, then you're going to end up steering more, and when you steer more and then go on the throttle, the car's going to be a little bit looser, you're going to overheat the tyres, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So what I would definitely recommend is, by all means, go back and have a look over how I do braking into turn 1, into the corkscrew, into turn 4, I think it is, into the final corner. It is hard on the brakes initially, and then feeding those brakes off. And if you're not sure why that seems to work, it is quite simple actually. If you bang the brakes on and you stay full brakes, then your brakes are trying to work at their absolute maximum capability, even though your speed is reducing. So even though they're doing their job and slowing the wheels down, you're still trying to slow them down as if they're doing 180 mile an hour. So you end up either stopping way too soon or not stopping anywhere near enough, because you're going to be effectively locking up the brakes, and the ABS is going to kick in, and then you're going to end up pushing on at a corner. You're not going to end up making the corners. Also, you're going to overheat the tyres, so when it comes to actually turning, you're not going to have any grip because they're going to be too hot. So by fading the braking, you bang the brakes on using all the aerodynamics to your advantage with that initial hit of the brakes, and then fading the brakes off. It's like a linear curve. Your speed comes down and your brake pedal comes up a little bit. So there's like a linear curve where effectively you're actually putting the same amount of braking force into the brakes for the speed that you're doing. It just makes it a lot more stable, and it may be something that people have perhaps struggled with other cars, where they've perhaps wondered how someone can brake at a certain point and make a corner when they can't. It could be down to the amount of brake being used. I know it may be a little bit of a head fuck for people, but it is a genuine situation that does have a massive effect. I'm trying to think of another corner that it happens at, Red Bull Ring, turn 3, or what we call turn 3, downhill braking zone, tricky right hand corner. That's a corner where if you go full brakes for too long into that corner, you don't make the corner. But you can go gentle brakes for a much shorter period of time and stop very easily. And it's all to do with how much force you're putting through those brakes, trying to slow the car down and add a downhill as well. It doesn't work. Turn 2 at Red Bull Ring though, uphill, you can be on the brakes harder for longer because you've got the uphill helping you. But still, if you stay full brakes for all the way to the corner, it's going to not really work for you. So yeah, hope this has helped. Have a good one, everybody, and good luck with the season. See you in a bit.